Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
He is a combat veteran. He spent multiple years being deployed in Afghanistan in combat zones. He developed PTSD. He's here to talk about his recovery, what happened, what it's like, and what he does about it today. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. If you're on the Clubhouse drop-in audio chat app, be sure to look for me and follow me. My name's John, the letter J, Wiley, W-I-L-E-Y. You can also search for at LET Radio Show. That's John J. Wiley, W-I-L-E-Y, at LET Radio Show on the Clubhouse drop-in audio chat app. Joining us from Georgia, we have Jeff Moffett, a.k.a. Pastor Jeff, which I've known from Clubhouse, which we'll talk in a few moments. His website is PastorJeffSpeaks.com. That's PastorJeffSpeaks.com. And he's written a book, a 31-day prayer devotional, Conversations with God from the War in Afghanistan. Jeff, thanks for your service in the military, and thanks for talking about this on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Buzz, very much appreciated.
It's my honor.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And by the way, we have gone through all kinds of things to make this happen. But I've known Jeff for, has been like 3 years now with Clubhouse?
Something like that, maybe 4 years.
It's crazy. And the thing about this, and I want people to understand this, this is a free app you download on your phone, and you can make connections with people like Pastor Jeff from all over the planet. It's really a great opportunity. And by the way, you were in the United States military, I believe it was the Army, am I correct?
Yes, I served in the United States Army, came in on the delayed entry program in 1976, came on active duty in 1977, and then I served until 1997 as active duty military, and then I served another 18 and a half years as a contractor, following my wife because she was still active duty.
So, by the way, thank you for your service. That's a long time. And by the way, you're not a young guy, which is no shame in that game because I'm not a young guy either.
Well, I still consider myself young.
Mentally, I think I'm young. Physically, not so much.
But I've been around for a little while.
Here's one of the things that impressed me about Jeff, and I want people to understand this guy is a laid-back, chilled guy. But if you hear part of his story, which I'm not privy to, you're going to find out that there was a whole lot of it that was not chill, not laid back, and it's taking a lot of effort on your part to get from point A, which is the younger Jeff Moffett, to point B, which is the guy you are today.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's been a lot of challenges, but, thank God I am a believer of the number one selling book of all time. I'm not religious, but I am spiritual, and I do believe in God, and it has gotten me from, some really tough places to where I'm at today, to have a positive attitude, and that's really where I'm at, as I try to see the positive in everything.
And I'm right there with you. I'm actually very religious, but I don't talk about it. I tell people all the time, you want to get to where I am, here's what I did. You do the same thing, and you'll get what you need.
Yeah, that's a good philosophy, but I recommend. I recognize that everybody doesn't take the same path, especially when it comes to spirituality. And there was a time that I was dogmatic. It was either, I was taught it was our way or no way, and I've grown from that and realized that ultimately, I don't think any of us have any definite proof. We all go, this is all about belief and faith, and therefore, if something's working for you with your faith and your belief, who am I to tell you that it's wrong?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And by the way, I know Jeff from Breakfast with Champions, and I believe you also have a room about PTSD. Am I wrong?
You are correct. I do a room, Strong Love Talks About PTSD, every Sunday at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. We've been doing that now for about 4 years. Community that I built for those who are challenged with PTSD, for those who are caregivers, and then for those who just want to learn about it. Really, I thought it was important, especially during the time of COVID, that there was a space for those of us who were challenged with it to be able to come to and support one another and find tools and techniques that could make life a little easier for us.
Before we get into your military service and what happened, you said some key words. You said those of us who are challenged. You don't strike me as being challenged now.
Well, thank you. So there's a few things that happened when I first came in. I joined in 76, came active duty in 77. I spent about 18 months in Texas at Fort Hood, and then I did my first overseas assignment in Korea. In Korea, I was approached by a officer, and it ended up in me being molested. And from that time, I internalized what had happened. Got in a lot of trouble, didn't realize why I was getting in trouble, but I did. So there's a paper trail that goes along with the truth of my story. And then when I got out, so that was early on, we went through the rest of my tours. And it's probably another 20 years before I even brought it back up. I mean, I talked with my first wife, who's deceased now, and at one point it got thrown back up in my face, and I just buried it, didn't talk about it anymore. And then I can't even tell you, John, when it came back up again, and I started pursuing the fact that I had been sexually assaulted because I hadn't processed it that way.
Look, I don't think that's. Here's a book. I've not read this book, but there's a book, and I'm probably going to butcher the title. Is that refers to trauma? The body keeps score. And
the body keeps score.
We think that we're handling stuff well, and I'm really good at compartmentalizing stuff. I'm really, really good at it, and kind of the careers that we had, it kind of teaches that. So you put stuff away and think, okay, that's never going to come back again. All of a sudden, boom, there it is.
Yeah, The Body Keeps Score is a very good book. I've read it. I agree with a lot of things that are in it. And especially as men, we do compartmentalize. And we also have this thing we call our pride.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because that's part of the reason why you guys like you and I are still alive and kicking.
Right.
Pride and fear goes hand in hand. And if we don't have either one of those, usually you have a short life.
Absolutely. And so it took me a little while. Like I said, it was over 20 years before I really started talking about it. Again, initially, like I said, I had a conversation with my first wife. I thought it was something that she had a right to know. But once it got thrown back in my face, you know what happens with men.
Yeah.
When we come out of the man cave.
Beat my chest and all that stuff. Hurt. I'll never talk about that again. We're talking with Jeff Moffett, also known as Pastor Jeff. I know him very well from Clubhouse. He was diagnosed with PTSD. He's a military veteran, which we'll talk about in a few moments. His website is PastorJeffSpeaks.com. That's PastorJeffSpeaks.com. He's written a book, a 31-day prayer devotional, Conversations with God from the War in Afghanistan. You know, we used to have an app, and it was a very popular app. And then, guess what? We couldn't hold a candle to our Facebook presence. How many people have the mobile Facebook app already installed on their phone? How many people use it on their computer? Make sure you follow us. Make sure you like us on our Facebook page. Just search for Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast, and be sure to send us a comment to one of the posts. Best of all, it's 100% free. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We'll take a short break. I promise you. We'll be right back. Of all the radio stations in the United States, there are no other shows like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. And on Facebook, there's only one official page. Do a search on Facebook for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, and be sure to like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. Turn our conversation with Jeff Moffett, a.k.a. Pastor Jeff, which I know very well from Clubhouse. He was diagnosed with PTSD as a result of an assault while in the military. He's a United States military veteran. And his website is PastorJeffSpeaks.com. That's PastorJeffSpeaks.com. He's written a book called A 31-Day Prayer Devotional, Conversations with God from the War in Afghanistan. I love that title of that book, Jeff, by the way. There came a point in my life where I began to realize that me being angry with God, for lack of better words, was still a relationship. And I had to embrace that relationship. And so sometimes those conversations were not pleasant.
I can understand. But the thing about that, John, is the conversations came about from me being, I'm going to say, a nerd and really processing the religious vernacular and how we process things. And as I looked at it, I really saw over time, as I've pastored all over the world throughout while I was in the military and as a civilian, and I noticed this phenomenon of many people were looking at God as this person who sat really high, out of touch, who looked low, and you had to have to get in contact with him. You had to have a mediator to go in between you, and it just didn't serve me. It didn't serve me. And as I read more and as I studied more, I realized after reading, and I'm not going to make this religious, but reading John chapter 17, that was the wrong perspective based off of what Jesus said himself.
Right.
And from that perspective, I came up with, he's right here within me, because that was his prayer for us to be one with him as he is with the Father. And from that point on, I reframed prayer as not this external thing that happens that only some people are effective as to be just me having a conversation with my Creator.
That's right.
And I was in Afghanistan during the war when I wrote it. And so that's how we came up with the title, Conversations with God in the War in Afghanistan. And for those who have been in harm's way, whether it be our immediate responders or those who are in our military services, it's a different psychic when you're dealing with what could be a life or a death situation, and you're looking at your higher power. It's a little different than regular church.
It's a lot different, to be honest with you. And there came a point where, and not to beat this horse, but I'm the one who changed. And I still tell people this all the time. All the exposure to trauma and violence, all that stuff had a profound impact on me, but I'm the one who changed. I need to get right-sized. And look, right. People told me prayer and meditation is what you need. I'm like, yeah, right. I need some sort of world-famous somebody or other to take care of me. But really, I pray and meditate daily. And when I don't, I feel the results. I'm not as even keel as I like to be.
And you know what, John? The thing about it is, out of all of the resources that we find through church, all the resources we find through religion, all the resources we find through spirituality, the investment in it, just simple communication with our Creator. It has the lowest investment monetarily, but it has the highest investment for results. And
it works really well. And I got to ask you this, because when we go back, you talked about your first wife and telling her then, and kind of got to throw them back in your face. Do you ever look back and say, that was a different guy, or there's a different time in my life? I'm not sure I'm the same guy anymore.
Oh, absolutely. I'm one who absolutely believes in that we are forever evolving As a matter of fact, the person that I was yesterday, I'm not that exact same person today. We are the sum total of our life experiences, of our resources that we have available, and all of the information that we take in. And because that's constantly changing, then we're constantly evolving. So absolutely, I'm a completely different person than I was back during that time frame.
And part of all what I say is part of what I went through is a large reason why I am the way I am today. So I can't separate the wheat from the chaff. This is all part of me, even though it feels like a different guy because I don't react the same way as I used to.
Okay.
And one of the things I want to get into your story, but one of the things that really was a big problem for me was anger. And anger was a symptom of the problems. It wasn't the problem.
You know, that is a key factor. I think that we could change the lives of hundreds of thousands, especially men, if they could understand that by the time you get to those 7 core emotions, anger, happiness, sadness, those 7 core is when we actually take action. But there's 2 levels prior to that if we can connect into it. I like to use a resource called the feelings wheel. And through that feelings wheel, it shows you the 2 deeper levels to those primary cores.
I'm laughing not at you, but I remember years ago asking, how you feeling? And I'm like, oh, I'm either happy or I'm mad. There's no in between.
Absolutely.
And they had this thing where they put these feelings and faces and all this stuff. I'm like, I don't know what this. You must be talking a different language.
And the crazy thing, John, is that, you know, that emotional intelligence, most people who have not done the work think that, especially with men when it comes to relationships, they think we're just being honorary when we really don't know. I mean, most men grew up not being taught emotional intelligence, not being allowed even to express their emotions because it seemed or was considered to be weak.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And look, and you can answer this or not, but I am on the outward appearances in public very stoic. People never see me flinch. They don't see me sweat. In private, I'm very emotional.
I'm emotional in both. I'm emotional in both because I also have something that's called aphantasia, John. And that aphantasia, I'm born different. It's not a diagnosis. My brain does not see visual images in my mind's eye. And because of that, like say, if I go to a movie, I don't think I've been to a movie that I didn't cry at. And my mind does not separate what's happening in the movie with the reality. So it processes any injustice that I see when I'm at a movie. My internals process it as it's actually happening. So I'm either on the side of the spectrum to where I'm super elated and crying with tears of joy, or I'm super angry and I've got tears of anger. So I normally don't go to public movies because the way I'm built, it just doesn't take it well.
Maybe you and I have a lot in common when it comes to movies. And by the way, I don't watch Hallmark movies at all because even as corny as they are, I know I'm going to start bawling. I'm that way with bad commercials. It's really, really bad. We're talking with Jeff Moffett, also known as Pastor Jeff, and I know him very well from Clubhouse, which is a free app for your phone. Check it out. And by the way, follow me, John J. Wiley, or look for @LET Radio Show. He was diagnosed with PTSD. He's a military veteran. We'll talk a little bit about his journey. And his website, by the way, is PastorJeffSpeaks.com. That's PastorJeffSpeaks.com. He's written a book, a 31-day prayer devotional conversation with God from the war in Afghanistan. This is the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We'll take a short break. I promise you, we'll be right back.
Someone asked, what's the catch? What's the cost? There is no cost for anything on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast website, letradio.com. letradio.com. Again, that's letradio.com.
Return conversation with Pastor Jeff, a.k.a. Jeff Moffett. I switched it around that way. I know him very well from Clubhouse, which is a free app for your phone. Look for John J. Wiley or at LET Radio Show. Follow me. He's a military veteran, United States Army veteran. He's diagnosed with PTSD, which we're talking about in a few moments. His website is PastorJeffSpeaks.com. That's PastorJeffSpeaks.com. He's written a book, a 31-day prayer devotional, Conversations with God from the War in Afghanistan. Jeff, I got to ask you this, and I don't mean any offense by this, but you don't seem like, you seem very measured. You don't seem like the guy who's ready to fly off the handle all the time. And with PTSD, that's what I tend to think of.
John, what has happened with me, first of all, is a part of my faith, because I've had faith as far back as I can remember. I've always loved God. I can't tell you a definitive moment of when I started. This just is something that has been in me, and that had a lot to do with it. When I was molested, I processed it, first of all, that I did something wrong, put myself in the wrong place.
Well, of course, because that's a normal thought. I must have deserved it. I did something to cause this.
Right. And so going through that self blame, I just found other things to put my time into, and actually church became my drug of choice. I became a preacher, ultimately then a pastor, and so I've pastored all around the world, traveling with the military. And so that took my mind off of what happened. But then in talking with others, because I hadn't even processed it as that I had been sexually assaulted, my brain probably couldn't have handled it at that point. But once I did started talking about it, and like I said, I did talk to my deceased wife about it, and it got thrown back up in my face, and I left it alone again. And then years later, it came back up. And what I found was that the more I talked about it, the more I could deal with it. So I started seeking counseling, started seeking therapy for it. But a big thing for me, John, was the fact that as an adult, I learned from something my mother had told me as a teenager after her and my father divorced, was that she had told me that my dad was bisexual. And I was like, well, she's just a woman scorned. My dad had no feminine tendencies. I like to say he told the roaches which way to march when he cut the lights on. He was just a man's man, and there were no indications that he had any feminine tendencies or any consideration to be in an alternate lifestyle. Ultimately finding out that had become a choice that he had made, and that he was a full member of the LGBTQA, created a different challenge for me, because at that point, that's not something that I was into. It was not something that I supported.
How old of a guy were you when you made this discovery?
I was in my late 20s, my early 30s.
And by the way, you could tell me a lot when I was in my early 20s, late 20s and early 30s, but you couldn't make me do anything. You could tell me a lot, you could talk to your blue in the face, but I had my mind made up about certain things. Right.
And it went against everything that he had taught me growing up. The values in the Moffitt's household were established, through my dad. At one time, he was a preacher, and it was rigid. It was black and white, and it was godly. That was the. And this,
by the way, is a pretty gray area too. It's like black and white. It's not necessarily a race thing. And I was a big believer. It's either this or that. There's no in between, and a lot of life is in between.
Right. And so there was in between, and I'm an analytical thinker, and I'm a principles thinker. So there was a lot of anger, and then I have boys. I haven't had any girls. I had boys, and so the challenge of processing, how do I transfer this information to my children, his grandchildren? And so that created a lot of turmoil. It also created additional hurt because I'm the type, I gave him an ultimatum to get him to tell me the truth, because I just wanted the truth. I couldn't change who he was or what he did, but I wanted to hear truth from him because that was something he required from us growing up. And because of that, we literally became estranged. But ultimately, I did realize that I didn't have a right to keep my children, his grandchildren, from meeting their grandfather, and we did make that happen.
Good. No, I'm glad you did that. And were you able to build, I know this is kind of a pointed question, were you able to build a relationship that you felt okay with your father afterwards?
No.
Never. And I always try to say this. My father passed away 30-some-odd years ago, and he's a great guy, and he had a profound influence on me. But I remember this. I always have to remember this, that it's up to me to decide what kind of relationship I want to have with, especially family members.
Right. It was, and I don't want it to seem in a bad way. What I realized, there was too much difference between the initial core values that my dad taught me and brought me up with, and the change that he had made. Now, what I was able to do is I was able to reckon within myself that he had a right to live whatever kind of life he wanted to live.
Right.
And I gave him respect for that. But as far as having a relationship or having someone, I mean, he was never the father that came to any functions. He promised but never would show up. So he wasn't around for any of the children being born. He wasn't around for any graduations, whether it be military or whether it be school. I mean, he just wasn't there. He was absent. And I resolved that could be because it was as difficult for him as it was for me, based off of him knowing how he had reared me and the values that he had taught me, and now he was living the exact opposite.
And I got to ask you this, because I personally believe that the road to happiness, for example, it leads through me, and I have to decide what kind of person I want to be. Was there a point in your life where you just felt like you weren't the guy you wanted to be yet?
There was. John, I was in Germany. I was retired. I was there working as a civilian. My wife was also active duty, was also active duty. And I started a master's course in human relations. And one of the best things that I did, because all of the courses that I took required me to do introspective research and to really find out who I was. Up until that point in my 30s, my life was wrapped up in who my dad was and what he had taught.
And part of it was who I thought I was supposed to be. And
right.
I jokingly tell people I was really focusing on women and what I thought I should look like on the outside. The inside was an absolute mess at the time. Now, we're talking with Jeff Moffett, also known as Pastor Jeff. I've known him for several years on the Clubhouse app and Breakfast of Champions. Clubhouse app is free. Get it for your phone today. It is 100% free. It's called Clubhouse. Look for John J. Wiley, W-I-L-E-Y, or at LET Radio Show, and be sure to follow me. He was diagnosed with PTSD. He's a military veteran. His website is PastorJeffSpeaks.com. That's PastorJeffSpeaks.com. And he's written a book, a 31-day prayer devotional, Conversations with God from the War in Afghanistan. When we return, we're going to talk more about his progress, how he got to where he's at today. Don't go anywhere. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Wouldn't it be great to get free tips on how to improve your life? Join us on the Clubhouse social audio app, Wednesdays at 12 noon, 3 p.m. Pacific, for Your Confident Life. It is always free. Get more details online at yourconfident.life. That's yourconfident.life, online at yourconfident.life.
Return conversation with Jeff Moffett, contact from Georgia, also known as Pastor Jeff, and I know him very well from Clubhouse. A free app for your phone. Check it out, clubhouse.com. And do a search for John J. Wiley or at LET Radio Show, and be sure to follow me. He was diagnosed with PTSD. He's a military veteran. We talked a little bit about that. His website is PastorJeffSpeaks.com. That's PastorJeffSpeaks.com. And he's written a book, a 31-day prayer devotional, Conversations with God from the War in Afghanistan. Jeff, sometimes I get, and I don't talk, I'm a firm believer in this old principle. Everything about me is not for everybody. And I'll give you little glimpses of my past, but I won't tell you the whole details, especially in apps like Clubhouse and other ones. I'm pretty controlled about what I'll talk about, what I won't talk about. And that's mainly because I don't like how I get. And I keep myself on a fairly short leash. But you don't come across as the guy that you described earlier.
Well, the thing is, I've learned at the age that I'm at now is that I get to control my emotions. My emotions are signals to me that there's something going on in my body. And when people get in trouble, oftentimes it's because they're allowing the emotion to control them. I've learned to tell the emotion, thank you, to validate the emotion. Is it something that's valid, or is this just, am I in my feelings? And if it's valid, then I get to choose what the action that I'm going to take behind it. And what that has done is given me a lot more peace. It gives me a lot more control over how I respond to something. Because at the end of the day, the only person that I can control, John, is me.
That's right.
That's it. I can't control anybody else.
And that's 100% true. And sometimes, look, I'll be honest here. Most of the time, I'm pretty good about controlling me, but there's some times where I'm not. And when I'm not, I'd say this all the time. It takes me a long time to get back to my center, and I usually just withdraw from people.
And that's a good point. So when I get to the point that I feel that I'm losing control of me, what I would do before I completely lose it, because I don't want to get to that point. I'm a believer in the Bible, but I also believe that there's some truth to the similarities of these astrological zodiac signs and being born in November. I don't want to go to the deep end of that.
By the way, I was born November 10th, and I am a stereotypical
November
Scorpio.
The 21st. That's it, November the 21st. So you understand exactly where I'm coming from.
My wife was born November 19th.
Okay.
So she's also Scorpio, and one of my daughters was born in November as well. And all three of us are fire plugs.
Right. So you know how it can get. I do my best not to get to that fire side. And the way I do that is I really do a lot of validating. I do a lot of analyzing, and I will look at how do I control, and is there a way for me, if I'm in a situation, it's nothing for me to be in a situation and find my way out. You know, I'm always looking for an exit, find the exit and exit and go someplace for a few days until I've calmed down and have a plan on how I'm going to move forward for whatever that situation is.
And by the way, this sounds like a result of a lot of therapy. And was that part of it?
Absolutely. A lot of therapy, as well as, like I say, the course I took with Oklahoma University Extension when I was in Germany was the beginning of it. Now, I did all but 3 classes for that master's in human relations. And I really don't, I care, but I don't care that I didn't do the other 3 because it was life-changing. It started me to looking inward at myself. It gave me the tools that I needed to move out of being the victim of my home and the victim of my circumstances to understanding who Pastor Jeff was,
right,
and how I operate. It really, up until that point, if you would have asked me, did I like cats, I would have told you no. And then you would have asked me a very simple question of why, And only thing I would have been able to tell you is that my dad didn't like cats, so I don't like cats. That's how far gone I was. This course allowed me to say and introspectively look at, you've never had a cat. How do you know whether you like cats or not? You're not your dad, so your identity is not wrapped up in who he is. You don't have to like what he liked and dislike what he disliked. And it started me to come out to literally find out who I was, because up to that point I had lived in his shadow.
Well, I got a question for you then. I have 4 cats and a dog. And I love them all. Are you a cat guy now?
I love cats and I love dogs.
Isn't that funny?
I right now, I don't want any more fur babies. Unfortunately, John, as we speak, my wife has befriended a neighborhood stray cat, and this is one of those cats that is friendly, comes up to you, rolls over like to say, rub my belly, follows you to the car, and I'm resisting right now, John. I'm really resisting.
Well, maybe by the time this interview's over, you'll look at it a little differently. I'll say this: look, I have a Rottweiler at home. His name's Enoch, and he does for me. He's not a trained therapy dog. He's not a trained service dog, but he really knows how to keep me on level, and he's really tuned to me. And the main pleasure I get, the main relief I get from him is I can sleep all night because I know that someone's got my back. I never have to worry. And
that's a good point. I can't deny that. That is a good point. I suppose I'm still dealing with some grief from my canine that we had to put down because he had cancer.
Yep, that's the hard part. It's a really hard part. Yeah. You have great experiences and one really bad day, and that bad day stays with you a long time.
Yeah, so I'm not ready to bring another one in. This cat, though, I don't know. It looks like it's going to be inevitable that I get drawn in at some point.
I think you already are, to be honest with you. I want to ask you this. I want to change gears a little bit. Has this become kind of your put a purpose to your pain, a passion for you?
My passion has become twofold. My passion is, one, educating as many as I can, educators, parents, students on aphantasia, which is the inability to see images.
Look, I don't know if I got that or not, Pastor Jeff, but I cannot, over these HGTV shows my wife makes me watch, and they say, yeah, picture this, and I can't picture that at all. That doesn't happen to me. Other things I can.
Yeah, so it's, my passion, because I spent 60-some years having this and not knowing what it was, and it caused grief, a lot of grief. People want to put you in a box. They want to give you a diagnosis. They want to turn your head 2 degrees to the right, look over to the left, squat down on one knee, and you'll
cough.
Be okay.
And cough.
Right. No,
I've had enough of that stuff. I don't need that. Look, it's taken me 60-some-odd years to be okay with the guy I am today. And I always say this, and I was never a bad guy, but I'm not the guy I want to be yet, but thank God I'm not the guy I used to be. Oh,
absolutely. And the other thing for it, John, is it's a superpower. I will reframe any other diagnosis that I'm given. And so I will say that I have been diagnosed with PTSD. I'm not in denial. I reframe it.
I do too.
But I own aphantasia because it gives me a superpower. And the superpower for it is because I can't see what's wrong, an image of what's wrong in my brain. When I go to solve a problem, my brain automatically goes to the solution.
Right. And a lot of times it's trying to solve a problem with a problem. That's what I look at it. So here's what I'll say about PTSD. I prefer to look at more like an injury, like orthopedic injuries. I'm not the same guy I was when I was 18. But I'm not Rambo. And a lot of what Hollywood portrays PTSD is not even remotely close. Your website is PastorJeffSpeaks.com. Can people find you there? Can they contact you at your website?
Yeah, PastorJeffSpeaks.com I have a page they can reach out for consultation in whatever area it is that they would like to consult in.
And I will see you very soon on Clubhouse. That's a free app, Clubhouse. Get it for your phone today and look for John J. Wiley or at LET Radio Show. Pastor Jeff Speaks is a website, PastorJeffSpeaks.com. The website is written a book, a 31-day prayer devotional conversation with God from the war in Afghanistan. Pastor Jeff, thanks so much for being a guest on Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, talking all about it.
Absolutely. And, John, for your listeners, if they go to PastorJeffSpeaks.com, the very last tab 4 says My Gift to You. They'll be able to download at no cost to them my ebook, Embracing Gratitude and Grief, a transformative perspective, because that's where my other passion is educating people on how to change their perspective on grief.
I'd like to thank our guests for coming on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is a nationally syndicated weekly radio show broadcast on numerous AM and FM radio stations across the country. We're always adding more affiliate stations. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, which is always free, please do me a favor and tell a friend or two or three. I'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.